This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, two reindeer with Brooklyn accents who were not named but bullied Rudolph in that old movie. This week, I'm joined by, from the Next Issue podcast, Danny.
I'm walking here. I don't know. Is that a Brooklyn accent?
Sure. And our good pal from the Comics That We Love podcast, Zach McCrary.
Get out of here with your stupid red nose. Forget about it.
All right, you guys have to keep those accents up for the rest of the episode. It's the only way to keep the holiday spirit alive because this episode is released on Christmas Day. We are not doing anything festive. In fact, the festive episode's actually coming out next week as some folks are going to be reading a Friday book that was written by Ed Brubaker. But we're going to instead just be talking about comic books today. So if you're celebrating Christmas, happy holidays. If you're not, hope you're having a good Wednesday. Otherwise, we're here to do the thing that we always do, which, like I said, is talk about comic books. So I've got two legally mandated questions, and that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with, we'll start with you, Zach. How about that?
Sounds good. I'm doing pretty well. Enjoying the Christmas season, having my first Christmas with the new fam. They're first in America, and it's going to be a good time. I think we're gonna have a fun holiday. And I've spent most of the month reading Batman, like nonstop. Nightfall. I read the entire Nightfall saga for my show, and so I needed a nice palate cleanser. So I was so glad that I was a guest this week and could get some other stuff into my world other than Batman. And the first thing that I read was a book called Freddie The Fix. It's a one-shot from Image Comics and the imprint Ninth Circle, written by Garth Ennis, art by Mike Perkins, colors from Mike Spicer and Andy Troy, and letters from Rob Steen. And if you haven't heard, Ninth Circle is a new imprint started by a bunch of people, including Ennis and Ram V, focusing on horror comics. And I'm really excited about that because I love horror comics. I bring a lot of horror comics to this show. It just became a thing that I am obsessed with somehow. And yeah, a whole imprint dedicated to it sounds fun to me. So the comic itself is about a fixer for the stars in Hollywood. Like, when something bad happens and rich people need it cleaned up and swept under the rug, they call a fixer. Or, the mob and stuff like that. And Freddie is a fixer for like the Hollywood elite, but not like the Hollywood elite you might think of, because this book happens in a world where vampires and werewolves and swamp creatures and even talking dinosaurs are real, and many of them work in Tinseltown. And so the comic, it feels a lot like, it's kind of like that amazing Filipino horror comic, Trece, like this normal person kind of walking the razor's edge between the normal mortal world and the supernatural. But the big difference is that Trece is a detective working for the police doing good. And Freddie, well, he helps, like, for instance, he helps a werewolf who's having a one-night stand and, accidentally tears the person's head off. He takes care of that, and did I mention this book is for mature readers? It is a Garth Ennis book, so that should have been realized already. Crude humor, sex acts, violence, etc., etc. Merry Christmas. But it's not like too serious of a book because it's got like really, really dark humor. It's kind of it borders on silly at times, and which I personally love because that's a very Garth Ennis thing. And it's very entertaining. About 52 pages. Plus the art is by Mike Perkins, like I said before, which is, I feel, perfect for this story. I loved Perkins on Captain America with Brubaker. His art leans heavily towards realism, and I always think that horror comics intended to be scary should lean that way too with the art to kind of bring you in a little bit more, And even though this is more of a dark comedy with horror elements, I feel like it's perfect for it. So yeah, it's a really fun book.
Interesting. How did you, I guess, were you just drawn to this book because it was Garth Ennis and Mike Perkins, or were you just looking for some horror book? This is a strange time of the year for horror books to come out,
I know. I had heard about Ninth Circle, and this is the first book to drop out of that, and so I was kind of waiting for it to see where it was going to go. Because as soon as I heard that Garth Ennis and Ram V were involved, I was like, well, I got to check out at least a couple of these books. I think one of the other guys that's heavily involved was a showrunner for. Oh crap! No, never mind. I totally forgot the show that he's a showrunner for. But yeah, it's like a who's not quite a who's who group, but there's a lot of names in there that drew me in. Is basically it.
Gotcha. is this book like magazine size? Like the cover makes it look like it's magazine size.
I read digitally, so I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I'd be curious. I'm wondering if Distillery is having an effect on the market. And if they are, I'm very mad about it because I have all these. I literally just bought 100 bags and boards that are for the modern comic book size. Man. And if more comics are going to be printed in magazine format, I'm going to pitch a fit here on this podcast every week for the next 6 to 12 weeks. Okay.
It's hard because I like that format. I think it makes books look real nice and it gives the art more room to breathe. But at the same time, when you buy 500 of boards and bags and suddenly your books don't fit, that's a real pain in the ass.
Maybe this is just Distillery and Image and whoever else is going to move to these magazine formats. Maybe even the Black Label stuff saying, hey guys, guess what? These comics, you don't have to actually keep them in pristine condition. You should just throw them in a box, unbagged, unboard. Who even cares? I know Danny's making a face right now, but I'm just saying, maybe we should all embrace the Paul Jasley in our hearts, who just throws his books into his boxes and says, you know what? That is just the way that the book should be carried because they're just pieces of paper, right? What's the point in keeping them pristine? They're just pieces of paper.
On that
Danny,
topic,
please rebuttal.
No, on that topic. No, I agree with you. Like, do whatever you want with your comic.
Yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to Matt. He's one of our friends on the Discord. If you follow him on TikTok, he's a savage.
Yes.
Somebody commented like, you're not bagging and boarding your comics or whatever, and he went to town on a comic book, and it was something recent too. It was really funny. I'll join our Discord. I'll link the TikTok on there and follow Matt on TikTok. He's playing Marvel Rivals.
Yeah, he's like
day and night.
It's pretty fun.
I think it's comics.matt, I think is his username. And I saw that TikTok and I about fell out of my chair laughing because he's in the video. He's like washing dishes and he doesn't have a towel. Things. And then he takes a copy of Power Fantasy #5 or whatever one. And he just starts drying the dish with it. I was like, yes, destroy the books. Like in it, he's like throwing them against the wall and throwing them on this table. It's so great.
That moment in the bathroom, and you're just like, "Oh, I know what's about to happen."
It was really
did you see the TikTok?
Yes.
Because that's
yep.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, good. Thank you, Matt. Shout out to Matt. He's such a good guy.
And we love Power Fantasy, so it was only for comedic effect. He already read the book. I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah, congrats to him, by the way, on getting over 1,000 follows on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yes, good for you. Right before they shut it down. Good for you, Matt.
Yeah. Womp womp.
Anyways, Danny, what's on the top? Or what have you been reading this week? Sorry, we'll get to the top of my pile later.
So I've actually been reading a lot of books, and I was really excited because I'm trying to come up. It's the end of the year. I'm like, I need to get a few things in before the end of the year, so I can make sure that I don't miss anything big for my list. And I wanted to catch up on a series. This is just something that finished this week. It is called Plastic Men No More, issues 1 through 4. This is from DC Comics. I read the first issue, and I like the creative team, and I'll talk about them in a second. But I knew that this was going to be a story that I wanted to read all at once. Luckily, it's only 4 issues, which feels like a weird number of issues, but I guess that's how they hit you with inflation in your trades. They only put 4 issues instead of 5 now.
Right. Well, this is a Black Label book, though, right? So, like, they just have had pretty short runs, like 3 or 4 issues each.
But there are no rules at the Black Label.
It's a Wild West.
But this book is by Christopher Canwell, who just amazing writer. Go watch *Halt and Catch Fire* if you have the AMC. I think it's also on Netflix. With art by Jacob Edgar and Alex Lintz. I'll talk about why we have 2 artists in a minute. It's actually for a specific reason and not because they need a filler. With colors by Marcelo Maiolo and letters by Becca Carey. So this book follows Eel O'Brien, better known as Plastic Man, who, he's a superhero now, but he actually used to be a thief back in the day. And the book is very good about filling you in. So if you've never read a Plastic Man book, like this book immediately catches you up in a couple of pages of like, who is he? But as he has an accident while he's out with the Justice League, and he now realizes that he's coming apart, he's coming undone, something's happening to him, and he's gonna die. And he wants to figure out not only how to fix himself, but is this also going to happen to his kid? Because he has a son who has the same abilities. So now he's worried that eventually his son will also succumb to whatever's happening to him. So he goes about this in the most roundabout way because he's getting no help from the Justice League, and that's the reason why we have two artists. One of the artists follows Plastic Man in the more serious tone moments of the book. The other artist follows Plastic Man when he's in with the Justice League. It's drawn in a Batman the Brave and the Bold type of style,
man.
Dude.
And they never take him seriously, even though he's telling them he's dying. Like they still think he's just kind of joking around because he is a jokester, right? That's his whole. That's one of his bits. So that whole premise, like, it hooked me immediately. So that's what I'm saying. They found, like, if you're using multiple artists for an actual purpose like this, to change the tone, to highlight some of these moments. And I'll say this: the Justice Leagues, they're kind of assholes. Like,
see, that reminds me of that show, Kevin Can F Himself. Have
yes,
you guys seen that?
Exactly like that.
It's got the woman who was in Schitt's Creek, and it's this drama show that is like, when it's a multicam show, like a sitcom, like any of the Kevin James, like King of Queens and stuff.
Yeah.
But then as soon as we are not focusing on the guy Kevin, we switch to like this single camera narrative that's like way dramatic. I've seen a couple of episodes because Kelly, my wife, watches. She really likes it.
Yeah.
And it's such a novel way to like show that these King of Queens style shows about this guy who's kind of a dumbass and a shithead to his wife, and maybe she gets to snap back at him a couple of times. It's actually like torturing her. It's an incredible show. I freaking love this idea though, Danny. Oh my gosh, what a brilliant idea to like tell this Plastic Man story.
I love it. And then on top of that, we have a really nice story about a father and son who, they are, he's not the best at. He recognizes that. Like,
sure,
we all probably know that he was a thief. He was away for a while, but it's a great way to get to know these characters, and then just it's entertaining. I won't say fun, but I will say it's entertaining. You get to see some like more like C-level tier characters like the Metal Man and Detective Chimp, who, by the way, is having a moment right now in DC. Like, he's in like at least 4 different books that I've read over the past month. So Detective Chimp, have your time in the spotlight. But yeah, it's really good. And then if you get through that and you want more Christopher Canwell, he's writing now Challengers of the Unknown, which is like another book that I'm like, I don't know who these guys are, but I'm gonna find out. And he's doing a really fun thing where they're teaming up with different Justice League members. So like, when a new wrestler comes on, you put him on in a program with somebody that's well known, so they can put him over. That's pretty much what we're doing here. He's teaming up with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman, and now you get to know the Challengers of the Unknown, so they can kind of go off on their own story. So yeah, really good stuff from Christopher Canwell. And really interesting story here with Plastic Man No More. I got to the end and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe we're going there. So highly recommend it.
You've sold me.
I love that idea, because most of the time when you think about it, like, Plastic Man is someone who is always present in like any event. He's always there in some facet. But he's always just kind of there because he is like comic relief usually when put in a group. So the idea that we get to see him through the eyes of the other Justice Leaguers, basically, and then get to see him in his own personal life in a completely different art style is just fantastic.
Yeah, I definitely need to check this out. I'd heard a lot of hype around this book, but I genuinely didn't know what it was about, and I didn't realize they were doing the 2 artist thing. So you've sold me on at least like trying out a crazy concept. Like, I probably won't be able to get the single issue / I don't want any more of these single issues on my shelf, so I'll probably wait for a hardcover to read this, or maybe read it on DC Ultimate or something. But or Infinite Universe Infinite, whatever it's called. But yeah, this sounds really cool.
Very cool. But Mike, what about you? How have you been? What have you been up to?
Well, I have I've been trying to like sit down and try to read some comics that I haven't wanted to read, right? So I sat down, I'll update on Baldur's Gate for the handful of people on Discord that were interested. I did get past the part in Baldur's Gate 3 that I could not get past before in my previous run through. Finally, I'm in a point in the game where I've never experienced some of this stuff. I don't know, people who play Baldur's Gate have probably played the first act and half like multiple times like I have. So I kind of know everything there is to do. I'm in new territory and it's very scary and it makes me feel excited. So I've been playing a bit of that. I went a little hard this morning on the Steam Winter Sale. There was a couple of roguelike games that I just said, you know what, let's do it. I pulled the trigger on this little game called Peglin, which is about a little goblin, and it's You ever played that game Peggle? You guys remember Peggle back in the day, where it's just like you shoot little pegs and it kind of bounces a ball around? Complete all of the things. It's like that, but you're a little goblin trying to fight monsters, and so in order to hit the monsters, you have to hit pegs and stuff, and then you can get these special balls that. If you like that type of game, this thing is it's very addicting. I lost 2 hours this morning. I got up early today to clean my house, and I lost 2 hours to this game still. I said, I'll try it just for like 10 minutes. 45 minutes went by, then another 45 minutes went by, and my wife was like, are you going to help me downstairs? I was like, yes. So but I did read comics. Sorry, go ahead,
Dan. I didn't realize that game had a name, the Peggle. So like you kind of blew my mind there.
I mean, I think you can still get it. Like, I think you could still play it like for free online. It's a very simple game, right? Yeah. But someone took that concept and turned it into a roguelike where you can like, you have to beat a map, you have to go through each level, and then you can upgrade your little pegs that you get, and then you can update your character. Again, it is the type of game that I want to play all the time, because I've been playing Balatro like it's my job. Like I was up till 3:30 in the morning on Friday playing Balatro because I was on a run. I couldn't stop. So I forced myself Saturday to sit down and read some comics because I knew I needed to. And I was going to talk today about how I read Uncanny X-Men #1, or I got most of the way through Uncanny X-Men #1 by Gail Simone and David Marquez, trying to get through some of these From the Ashes things because I heard a lot of people complain about it online about how they didn't like it. I've been hearing nothing but negative things, and I was like, well, if it's as bad as everyone's saying, surely I'll find something fun in it. So I figured I'll read the book that's got Rogue and Gambit in it. I, like I said, did not finish the first issue. I still have it sitting on my computer. I purchased it on Kindle, and I was like, let's do this. It's tough. So I'm going to buy one more issue. I'm going to see if I can get through these 2 issues, because, you can't always judge these books by just their first issue.
Got to get your footing. It's a whole new era of X-Men.
I will say the first issue of Uncanny is probably the saddest one, Mike. So I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, I can't wait to get to the end of it, but I'm not going to talk about that today because I really need to chew on it more. So instead, I'm going to talk about this new series called Bug Ego, which you can read online for free. The chapters 1 through 5 are free. They're on the Shonen Jump app. So if you go to viz.com/shonenjump, all one word, you can read the first 5 chapters of this for free. This is written by one who's also done One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100. And I want to shout out Kyle and Furret in the Discord who were talking about this the other day. And I was like, oh, it's a new book by one. I'll give that a shot. And it turns out I gave all 5 chapters a shot. And they're like 40 to 70 pages a chapter. So like you're getting a lot of comics for free right now if you just want to go read that. But it needs 40 to 70 chapters or pages every issue because, oh my gosh, it's like so complicated. So let me give just a quick summary of like the first chapter to just see if I can get you guys primed, because this is a very weird comic. So like the story basically comes down to these 2 characters. I guess let me just read what I wrote. I'll just read it verbatim. From the creator of Mob Psycho 100 and One Punch Man comes a really weird comic about the quote hacks you can apply to life. Things such as preventing yourself from having sudden diarrhea or going back in time. ? Kokudo and Hitsujiya are high school student acquaintances with a shared interest in these quote hacks that you can apply to life. After Hitsujiya and Kokudo shows Kokudo some of his quote hacks, aka preventing yourself from having sudden diarrhea, Kokudo reveals some of his quote hacks that seem to warp the world around them, such as making a bird poop in the same spot every time when you use a vending machine a specific way, or forcing a dirty umbrella to reappear in the same spot at a train station if you move it to a specific bush near that train station. Weird reality warping things that you're like, is this a coincidence? Is this something else? When Hitsujiya tries to use a hack that involves him streaking into the field of a sports game in order to go back in time to ace a test, the quote hack doesn't work, and it results in him growing old, living life as a failure/loser because he couldn't believe that he got caught doing this thing and he couldn't ace this test, got expelled, yada yada yada. So what is this book even about? Right? Yeah. In the far future, later in this chapter, Hitsujiya has failed, Kokudo, who's a curious little weird dude as an adult, like clearly this is a one drawing. Like if you've ever seen one actual comic book art that he's done, it's like really basic, and it's just these round heads with these goofy eyes and stuff. This is clearly someone that he drew, that the artist on this book, Kyoto Shitara, interpreted in a very fun way. He finds Hitsujiya and convinces him to perform the hack again, right? Despite that original hack failing the first time. It's like, if you do it right this time, you can go back in time to this test and you can ace it. And it works. And that's kind of how the first chapter ends. And so I don't really know what this book's about. I'm like, I gotta read number 2. And number 2 is even weirder. And then number 3 is even weirder. Like, if I'm not mistaken, number 3 features like a dream state, because they discovered this hack that allows you to have lucid dreams. And in the dream state, Hitsujiya is like surfing on a flying piece of poop that is flying through the air, because I don't know. This is like the weirdest, most interesting manga series I've read in a long time. Like, I can't find a reason to fault it other than it's just immature, but it's a gag manga and like a conspiracy manga, and like there's like a big mystery box at the center. Like, where did these hacks come from? Why is reality allowed to be bent? There's this sticker thing that we discover in one of the later chapters where we found out that Kokudo has like this notebook full of hacks. This isn't revealing too much. And there's a sticker on it, and it keeps changing, and we don't know what's causing it to change, but we know that it has changed. So there's all these mysteries, and you get like the first 5 chapters are just bonkers. It's really goofy, and it touches on all these like weirdly nostalgic feelings that I get around like there's some secret methodology to the universe that I just don't understand. If only I could figure it out, my life would be easy street, right? And that's kind of what this book is. These guys are trying to hack their lives. Some of them are just like, here's an easy way to get like 200 yen off of like a sale discount. And then Kokudo's, here's a way for you to like not hate eating peas anymore, right? Like, that's part of the story. Really, really weird stuff. So I don't know. I want to read more of this book because it feels like there's no meat to the book yet. It's kind of just playing with a lot of ideas, and I really don't know what the central like the actual story is going to be, because right now each chapter kind of feels like a one-off, just exploring this idea of these undefined hacks. Like, there's no limitations to any of these hacks. They're either really, really small or like reality changingly large. So I really want to know where this book goes. On top of that, the art for this book goes harder than any book has any need to go, right? Like, if you ever read a book like Vinland Saga is a perfect example. The art in that book, so unbelievably good. And you're like, yeah, this is a monthly book. This is a book that's like, clearly the artist is putting their entire blood, sweat, and tears into this every single month to give you like 40 pages of just absolute brilliant manga. And One Punch Man has the same vibe sometimes. This book goes like unnecessarily hard in some panels. There'll be like, okay, this guy is now going to be looming over a character, so let's make the most detailed human being we've ever seen in this manga, and then cut back to your standard like flat faces and all that other stuff. It's really crazy, and it's usually done to like emphasize a joke, right? Like that scene I was talking about of Hitsujiya surfing naked on top of a giant flying piece of poop. Unbelievably detailed. The whole 2-page spread does not need to be that detailed. I mean, the poop itself is blurred out. They use like a classic, like, pixelated blur, but like nonetheless, like the whole page is super detailed. It's crazy how hard some of the art goes in this book, and it's 95% of the time just for gags. And I really love that. I think it's a really cool to just like make this. There's like a mystery to this story, but it's also very goofy. And I don't know. Each chapter, like I said, is like 48 to 60 plus pages each. So you're getting a lot of comic book. It'll be really interesting to like see where this story goes. Because again, I don't feel like it's actually established what the real story is going to be. But nonetheless, I am hooked. And I'm so mad that another book by One has gotten me by the throat like this. So yeah, if you guys have a second, go check out at least the first 1 or 2 chapters. It's a lot of comics for free on the Shonen Jump website right now, so you don't even have to have an account to log in and read it. It's great. So that's Bug Ego 1 through 5.
This does explain all the activity in the manga channel, and also that screenshot that you posted. I think it was you, Mike.
Yeah,
it was under the spoiler tag, but I was like, whatever, I'm not reading this. Let me see what it is. And oh my god, I was like, it's still blurred out. What's going on? So
yeah, it's unnecessary detail for a man surfing on a giant piece of flying poop. So
color me curious,
Bug Ego,
because isn't it usually with manga that to emphasize the joke is when the art usually gets more simple and cartoony, and like this kind of flips the script on that and makes it super brilliant art for the joke. I love that.
They went the
I think so.
route. Or just like
Yeah,
get the
Yeah.
ultra super detailed.
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like I think this book is probably going to get canceled in like 4 chapters or something, because I cannot see people hooking onto this other than like weirdos like me. But who knows? Maybe it's got a big name attached to it. I don't know the artist. I'm not familiar with the name, so I don't. Maybe they've done some other stuff that people really like, and it's probably going to be like, this is one of the greatest mangaka that's ever lived, right? Because I'm just ignorant. But
Listen,
yeah, it's
Dan's a hit, so I
it's
don't
a
know.
fun book. Yeah, I don't know. Dan to Dan's a hit. It's kind of a weird book.
And that
so
book gets weird.
Dan to Dan
yeah.
is very weird.
It's true. But speaking of, let's talk about new comics, or at least comics that are new to us. Let's talk about books on the top of our pile, whether they are new or old, or just something we're trying to get off of our shelves. I want to shout out some of our folks on Discord who are hanging out with us today that are also reading comic books and told us what they're reading next. Avocado Kenobi is going to be reading Harley Quinn, Girl in Crisis. I don't know what this book is, but somebody said Danny might be able to tell us.
I think it's one of their YA style books, so it's like a little
cool.
self-contained thing. That's what it sounds. I'm pretty sure I've seen that cover, which I've also been meaning to get some of those because they're so interesting. But then I'm like, but my weekly stuff.
I know. It's part of the problem of being a comic fan, right?
I know.
Oh, this is by Teenie Howard and Sweeney Boo. Oh, that's a killer combo of a team. Interesting. Well, you'll have to let us know how it is. Anybody else who else reads it out there? But I guess let me bounce over to you, Zach. What is on the top of your pile this week?
The top of my pile this week is from Distillery, your favorite group with their amazing magazine style.
Yeah.
It is The City Beneath Her Feet #1, written by James Tynion IV, and art by Elsa Chartier, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Aditya Bidikar. First off, I love the entire team. Like, everything about that. I didn't know anything about this book except that, and I picked it up. That sold me immediately.
I can't blame you. I wish that I could find a way to read this digitally that wasn't on their site, because man, this book looks awesome.
It does. I'm very excited about it. It's another one of my palate cleansers, hence Freddie the Fix, and of course this book as well. It's billed as a bloody love letter to New York City. The City Beneath Her Feet is an action thriller love story for a new generation. And the plot sounds pretty interesting. It's like a romance that burned out hot and fast becomes revisited when our main character Zara turns out to be the emergency contact for her ex Jasper. So like, they had this quick romance, this hot burning out, of this romance, and later suddenly she gets a call because she is Jasper's like emergency contact. And the idea is, quote, Zara must piece together the mystery of Jasper's life, all while being hunted by the assassins who once called Jasper one of their own. And it sounds like a fun romp. And like I said, this entire team is just fantastic. And I'm going in with very high expectations. I hate to do that with books because when you go in with too high expectations, you can be let down real easily. But I know it's going to be gorgeous. And I know it will have a thrilling story because this team is just that good. And #2 comes out in January. So it's time for me to get through #1.
Interesting. I mean, this is a banger team. Honestly, this is like any other publisher. I'd have pre-ordered this, right? I love this idea so much. It sounds like Tynan's gonna like knock it out of the park. We love our good friend Elsa Chartier, so like, man, I really like. I was looking it up on their website. It's like $15 to buy this book unless you buy it through your comic shop. So, yikes! I hope it's good. You have to let us know.
I will.
I remember reading the Devil's Cut piece of this, like when that book came out.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, this story looks. I mean, they released 8 stories, and I don't think we've gotten all of them yet. Right? So when that
I don't think so.
So this is one of the ones that I was also very excited about. It's hard because with Diamond's been having so many delays and stuff. Like I don't know when stuff's coming out that's still going through Diamond. Like my Boom comic, one of them with the Hello Darknesses that I was waiting on, like it got delayed by 3 weeks. So I never know. I never know when my books are going to be at the shop if it's coming through Diamond, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I could spend another hour just talking about the Diamond stuff where they because for those of you who are not in the know, right, like Diamond consolidated where all of their books are shipping from because they used to have a location in New York, if I'm not mistaken, and now they're consolidating everything to another place, I think, which is like in Mississippi, I think.
I don't know.
somewhere else, and it's causing delays across the board for everybody who ships through Diamond. An old shop that I used to go to called Eastside Mags up in Montclair, New Jersey. Shout out, they're maybe one of the best shops in New Jersey as far as I'm concerned. Has been sending us regular updates, because I used to have a pull list with them of just like, hey guys, we don't know when our books are showing up. We really apologize for this. We have no control over it. And it's like the whole industry is in shambles because of this like one distributor having, problems. And it kind of, there's a whole other conversation to be had. So I hope you guys get your books soon. That's all I'll say.
And I hope some of these smaller creators and indie creators, because they have to go through Diamond. That's the big problem, right?
Yeah,
right.
The bigger ones, like, whatever, they can probably find something else. If
they can go through Lunar, they can go through who else? Yeah, it's a bummer. But let me talk about a book that's not having distribution problems, because I already have it at my house, and that is a comic that I've been sitting on for a minute. The Kickstarter ended a long time ago. It's called Frontier. Came out from Magnetic Press. This is by Guillaume Singelin. I'm probably butchering their name. I apologize. French artists. They do a lot of books in France. They've done some Marvel and DC work, but for the most part, I think they publish their own independent OGNs. This story here is a little bleak, but I have a lot of hope for this. So let me just read you the synopsis that they give us from Magnetic Press. It was inevitable. Our ravenous hunger for resources eventually stripped the earth dry. Fortunately, our ambitious technology reached the point where we could turn our sights to the stars, which were full of materials to exploit, a new frontier for a new gold rush. In this rustic future, 3 souls eke out a living. Jisoo, a scientist with a passion for discovery, Kamina, a feisty battle-scarred mercenary, and Alex, an asteroid miner who has never been to Earth. Through their exhausting daily lives, they each dream individual dreams, following their own road towards the horizon. But when those paths cross, those dreams change trajectory, taking them all in a direction they couldn't have imagined. What will become of humanity when it is completely disconnected from its cradle, the Earth? I don't know. But Singelin's art is incredible. They did a book that I previously read called PTSD, which is a really fantastic story about a war veteran who was part of a war that nobody liked, and they come back to their home and essentially have like traumatic, PTSD from having been in the war. People don't really seem to treat them well until they find this community of other vets and these people who just refuse to turn away from them and offer nothing but absolute blind, kindness to them. It's a really almost inspiring book about how even through like the darkest times in our life, we can find kindness in others. We can find community in the world that we live in, even if it's really dark and bleak. So I'm confident, or at least I'm feeling very confident, that somehow Singelin will turn this somewhat dark story about a world cut off from its resources and a world cut off from its community, with these 3 characters, into something that is positive. So looking forward to reading Frontier. I'm finally going to sit down to it. It's a humongous hardcover that I got. It's really beautiful to see Singelin's art like displayed this way. They do this very cute looking style of art that I really enjoyed in their previous work. So excited to dig into this. I don't know if you guys read anything from Magnetic Press before from this publisher.
I have not. No.
Okay,
I'm looking.
They do a lot of translated books, which are really great.
I'm looking at some of the art for Frontier, and it is detailed, and it's I love it. It's like if Mobius did manga. Like it's like there's heavy detail, but it's a little cute, and it's
like chibi characters almost.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't know. I really like the way that this, like how this guy draws. Like, even though things look quote unquote cute, it's like there is a seriousness that they can draw that you can. And again, PTSD is a perfect example. I love that book just physically because it comes with this really cool cardstock or like really thick cardboard cover that has the letters PTSD carved into the book, so that when you open it up, it's like they're like hollow and you can see all the way through it. Oh. It's like such a beautiful book, and I picked it up on a whim one day when I went out to Desert Island Comics in Brooklyn. I just happened to be out there, and I was like, well, I gotta buy something. I'm at this comic shop because that's what I do at every single comic book shop. I'm sure if you guys are the same way.
Yep, same.
But yeah, I went there and I was like, oh, I'll buy this. And it turns out that book is incredible. So like I've been following their work. Turns out I had backed some other things. Aster of Pan is another book that Magnetic Press put out. So they do the thing where they message you for every single Kickstarter and every single backer kit that they do. And so I got a message about this one. I was like, oh, I'm sold. I don't care what this book is. I'm buying it. It's from this artist who I totally love. So yeah, if you guys get a chance, it's out there. Frontier. It's incredible. It looks incredible. I'm excited to read it.
I like that Mike read the first part of that synopsis. a ravenous hunger for resources eventually stripped the earth dry. I was like, so it's not fiction.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like The Expanse. We're only a little bit in the future, right? But anyways, Danny, what's on the top of your pile this week?
Well, before I get into what's on the top of my pile, I did get a message from my attorney. I do have to mention at least one Batman book real quick.
I forgot.
If you've been waiting, Batman Gargoyle of Gotham #3 finally comes out this week.
Nice.
I'm excited. That's probably the weirdest Batman book I've read all year. But Raphael Grandpa, fantastic artist. It's just a very weird and convoluted story. But it's finally out. That's what happens when you have one person and you give him enough time to actually finish the comic properly. But the thing that's on the top of my pile, because I'm actually in the middle of reading it, is The One Hand and the Six Fingers. This is the collected edition. A little bit of, before I get into that, one of the coolest things, and we were talking about this before the show, this book is kind of like, this is two different series that have a connected story, and the books kind of came out simultaneously. So like you could go, you read number one for one book, you read number one for the other, and that kind of brings you along in the story. So I love that the collection keeps that same order, because that's the way the story is meant to be consumed, which is something that, if you read a big event from the big two, sometimes, most of the time, that doesn't happen, right? They'll just collect all the one things from the same title and then put them all, even in like an omnibus. So hopefully this means that people are like, oh, maybe we should keep things in the right order, and not rearrange them. Don't get too crazy like that Hoxpox in that they re-released in the correct chronological order. That book also doesn't make any sense.
God, yeah.
Cool. It's a cool exercise for editing, I guess. But man, oh man, that was interesting. But back to this one. This book is written by one of the, well, I'll just say everybody who was involved. Written by Ram V and Dan Waters, and then with illustrations by Lawrence Campbell and Sumit Kumar. So each one of them takes one of the titles. So if you're a fan of things like Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, or the Batman story, The Black Mirror, these graphic novels are very similar in tone, similar in approach, and similar in the way that they kind of make you feel as the reader. I think that both of these guys, Ramvi and Dan Waters, are doing some of their best work, right? Ramvi just wrapped up in Detective Comics. Dan Waters, here I go again with the Batman books. He actually just dropped the Batman book as well. So yeah, I'm super excited to figure out, to follow what they're doing with all this experiment. And I remember reading the first issue of both when this came out, and I was like, this is interesting, this is good, but I'm gonna have to wait, because the one thing is that I can't remember, with all the stuff that I read, I don't want to have to try to remember what I read the previous month.
It's a lot to bounce between. Totally.
Because one of the books follows a detective who is about to retire, and on his last day, he gets drugged back in because this killer is back.
He's classic.
He has caught this killer twice before, or somebody that commits this type of crime twice before, and on his last day, they find another body with the same MO. So he's got to come back and finish the job. The other book follows an archaeology student who doesn't know what's going on, but he's losing time. There are gaps in his memory, and also because he works at this radioactive place, he's growing a sixth finger. So how do these stories connect? How do these people intertwine? That's kind of what I'm going through. It's really cool. Definitely you feel the noir, but like the neo noir of it all. Like it really feels like you're walking through Blade Runner, especially on the one hand book. And it's weird, and there are robots that they call cogs that are like, they look like humans, so pretty much like replicants. So like, yeah, this is very exciting as somebody that does love both of the Blade Runner movies. And I'm 6 issues into this. The collection's like 360 pages because it's all 12 issues of both series, all in one. So that's what I'm gonna do probably the rest of the holiday break. Just kind of get through all those pages that are left. So highly recommended. This just came out on December 11th, I think we figured out, and then I think at bookstores it'll be out on the 24th as of the release of this episode. So
yeah, I'm very excited to reread this series once I get my copy of the trade, and also to read the follow-up series, because I think after this book is out, I think next year they have a book that's the follow-up series to this that will, I think, wrap everything up. Not to say that the One Hand and Six Fingers doesn't come to a conclusion, because it most certainly does, but I think they had a little bit more in mind to kind of like really solidify the universe that I think the story takes place in. And I believe that Ram V and Dan Waters are working on it together, right? It's like both of them paired up to write this story. I think I read an interview at one point with Ram V, or maybe it was with Dan Waters. Maybe it was both of them. I can't remember. But where they were talking about how like Ram V, basically, he's like, I have this idea for half of a story and I don't know how to write the other half because I really want to tell this detective story. And Waters was like, well, I can tell the murderer side of the story, which is, spoilers, what the Six Fingers is about. But it's pretty clear right out of the gate.
Oh, for sure.
But it's very, very interesting that like Ram V was just like, hey, you're my pal. Can you help me write this? And they tell maybe one of the most bizarre stories ever around this thing, because apparently it was very much the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing ish. Like there was an overall plot that they were following, but like how they got to those plot points, I think wasn't like completely choreographed. So it's
I love that.
It's really cool. I mean, I'll just say the big twist at the end is so cool. It's such a cool book. Like again, the noir is there. You get the twist. You get it. It's can't talk about how much I love that book. Danny, I can't wait to hear what you think of the end of this
I got
book,
to the end of I got to the halfway point and I was like, this is not the same book that I started reading, but I'm still on the super cool journey.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're going to end up back at the beginning, like the same type of story we're getting at the beginning, or if it's just going to go in a completely different direction. So I'm very excited. Yeah. This is really one of those books that it's more about the journey than the destination. Like let's just kind of go and have fun with this.
I love that.
And like Mike said, it's a really cool kind of exercise too in just comic book creating, because it's already a collaborative medium with your artist. But imagine having to collaborate with a writer, with another writer, where they're kind of doing their own story, and you have this very loose structure, right? So especially because both of them are so talented. Like I said, I'm reading all their books. Ram V just started doing New Gods at DC, so like I'm gonna be reading Ram V books for a while.
I feel like every book he puts out, with the exception of his Detective Comics run, I think I've picked it up, right? Because I'm just like, I gotta see what he's doing.
What's the Flavors book that he did over
Rare Flavors?
Yeah, Rare Flavors. I need to go back,
dude.
Finish that.
Is that going to be on my best of 2024 list? I don't know. We'll
stay tuned.
I mean, stay tuned. It's coming up next year. Yeah, geez, this is the last episode of the year because next week's episode, we do have like a pre-recorded episode that some folks put together about the book Friday. If you haven't read that Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin, no, Marcos Martin who's on that book?
I think that's who it was. I'm on that episode and I already forgot.
I can't believe you, Zach. I'm so
I failed.
Yeah, Marcos Martin. Yeah, we had it right. And yeah, really cool episode. They talked about all three books, if I'm not mistaken. And so this is the last episode of the year, which is exciting. It's terrifying. We've got like some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline, and I feel like I say that every year. But we really do have a cool thing coming that I'm very excited to talk about in our annual episode next year. Yeah, and I think our best of 2024 list is going to drop like right at the beginning of January. So if you're looking for some comics that we thought were the best that were published in 2024, keep an eye on our website, ircbpodcast.com, because we're going to have that list come up. I don't know, 3 to 5 each from each person or whoever wanted to participate. I've already looked at the list, and I thought there were going to be more repeats, and I'm surprised that there are not, because did you guys know there's some really good comic books that came out in 2024?
It goes to show how diverse like all of us are as readers too.
Sure.
Because we're reading so many different things. So I'm very excited. I haven't opened the document. I have my own list because I don't want to be like swayed by anybody.
Right. And no influence like that from Danny. Yeah. But yeah, so this is it's been a good year, and we'll talk about this more at the annual as we celebrate essentially what is the 10th year of IRCB, which is the most insane thing in the world. So for the 4 of you that have been listening that long, and 2 of them are me, my mom, and then Danny, I think, thank you guys for listening. But I think that wraps us up today. I don't know, Danny, Zach, any last thoughts before we wrap up our episode here?
I hope you get everything you wanted when you're opening. Put this on the background at your house. Put this episode on.
Yeah. When your family's opening your stuff, yes. Put this episode on. That's a great idea.
Nobody needs to watch A Christmas Story again.
Listen, that's what I do. I like create my own TBS live version of the thing where I just have Christmas Story on repeat all day at my house. Oh yeah, that reminds me. One other thing, we do have the 2025 reading challenge about to start in February, right? So it'll technically be whatever the book is picked for January, but we have some people that finished our reading challenge this year. And they're currently in the process of picking what book we're going to talk about in January. And I think we're going to do that on our second episode of the year next year. So make sure to look forward to that and check out the Goodreads group if you're not already a part of it. We're going to have a big list of folks that are on Patreon. If you're not already a member, now is the time. Get in before January, because if you back us, if you're supporting us at the $5 and above level, you get to pick a book that's going to be in our 2024 or 2025 reading challenge, which is very exciting. Plus, we've got a whole new series that I think I'm going to announce at the annual that we're going to be launching on our Patreon. That Better Batmobile is coming to an end. Season 2 is about to wrap up. And in its place, as well as in place of a couple of other things that we're shuffling around, we've got a brand new series coming out that's going to be, I'll just say, Tia's in charge of it. So if you like Tia, if you like the episodes that Tia's on, you're going to want to listen to this. It's only going to be available on our Patreon. We may drop the first one on the main feed, but after that, it's a 10 episode-ish series. It's going to be coming up, and that's very exciting. More to come again at the annual, where I'm basically going to just be unveiling things nonstop, and people are going to be shooting off confetti. So
if you're a fan of Aaron Taylor Johnson, you definitely want to be on our Patreon. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Oh, we also at the end of this month-ish, whenever Zander gets around to edit, which I think is going to be the end of this month, we do have a Craven the Hunter episode. Danny, Kara, and I all went to go see Craven.
Oh my.
And boy, oh boy, we had thoughts. I was like, oh, we'll be done in like 30 minutes. We recorded for almost an hour straight talking about this movie because boy, oh boy, there's so much to say. And I promise you, it's not all negative. It's actually a pretty overall balanced discussion. So if you're interested to hear our thoughts, check that out too. That's on our Patreon very soon. It'll be on there very soon. But plus, we were talking this week about the I Read Star Wars comic book series, and then someone wanted to ask us about if we'd ever done commentary or anything on the original Star Wars movies, and it turns out that's also on our Patreon. If you're interested in a riff track style commentary between like 7 of the IRCB crew about Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, that's on Patreon as well, maybe attached to a video. I can't tell you whether or not that's true, but it is all on Patreon at $5 and above. You get access to hundreds of others. I can't stop plugging the show, but I'm telling you, there's so much good shit on there, and I feel like we don't talk about it enough, so why not at the end of the year? So anyways, if you're sick of hearing me talk, I think that's where we're going to end the episode. Thank you, Danny and Zach, for joining me this week and letting me ramble here. Thank you, Nick, for proof listening. We appreciate everybody out there listening live. Thank you to everybody listening on Discord and everybody who listens to the show. I hope you have a good 2024 wrap-up, end of the year. I hope next week's episode is great for you. Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Christmas, Happy everything else that you're celebrating at the end of this year. We'll catch you in 2025. So I don't think Zander also, I guess, I hope Zander had a good year as well. But anyways, I think until next time, comics are good and sorry.